This week on the Epstein saga.
People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file.
Jeffrey Epstein, and that's the real Jeffrey Epstein, not Jasmine Crockett's Jeffrey.
Took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings, they are available for everybody to review.
In relation to the convicted sex trafficker, unfortunate for that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on the people that...
Listen, I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein. Just so that people understand, when you make a donation, your picture is not there.
Took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein as I had my team dig in very quickly.
I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled, and that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out.
On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you can't tell us what your next step.
Just that simple. It's not going away.
Do you think that the president is potentially one of those people?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Are they trying to cover up for the president?
I asked Cash yesterday, point blank. I said, who else, if anyone, besides Epstein, were these young women trafficked to? And he said nobody. It's not in our files.
This is the real Jeffrey Epstein. From Hakeem Jeffrey's campaign. Dear Jeffrey, we are thrilled that we are working with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, one of the rising stars of the New York delegation, sometimes referred to as Brooklyn's Barack. Hakeem...
Yesterday on the floor that you had Jeffrey Epstein over for dinner and took money from him back in 2013. This was after the sex scandal. Any comment on that? Will you be holding members accountable regardless of party affiliation if there were any misdeeds related to Epstein?
Was that a serious question or a serious statement from malignant clown James Comer that I had Jeffrey Epstein over for dinner, that I accepted money from Jeffrey Epstein? What's extraordinary to me about
the face you make when you know light skins are liars.
They're not good. Okay? They are completely indefensible, but I already told you, I was done with MAGA at the moment he looked us in the face and he said, what files?
All right. We're just going to stop the video, all right? I'm so sick of these politicians. At this point, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat, okay? That's all just a mirage and a facade just to keep you in the OODA loop, all right? Listen to me. This is how our government works when it comes to this Epstein stuff, all right? Let's do a rewind. Cue the noise.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Before we even do this, DJ Reels you in. If you like this video, please go like and subscribe. But the rewind on this is last week, all these 3 emails dropped by the Democratic House Committee. And the emails, in a way, kind of made Trump look bad for a second. But when you read them, you realize that it's not really anything damning on Trump. In fact, it shows that Epstein was worried about Trump. In fact, because of those 3 emails being released, if you didn't know, the Republicans then go, oh, okay. They released 20,000 emails that are very damning for particular Democrats that are currently sitting in Congress. One named Blassett, who was communicating with Epstein in 2019 during a hearing talking to one of Trump's people. So, what is going on? This is a shit show. Then you get Jasmine Crockett up here. You see what she says. Yeah, she got that name wrong. That's a different Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein's a doctor in New York, not the Jeffrey Epstein that we're talking about. Do you see where the oil is being poured in the pool and they're throwing gold in the bottom and they're telling you, it's right there, go get it. But you can't see. It's all a mirage. Because what they don't want you to focus on is what we're going to talk about. is what they're not asking Kash Patel is the strange and convenient deaths that surround this Epstein saga. And let me tell you, everything about these deaths is convenient. I mean, you're a normal person. I'm a normal person, right? I was a police officer. I've seen a lot of people die, unfortunately. Most people go their whole lives and it never happens. They might see a grandmother or dad, right? All these deaths surrounding just this one situation. You want to call me a conspiracy theorist. Everything you're seeing right now in front of you is a mirage. And in 30 days, we'll get these emails because Trump finally told him to pass the bill, and it passed unanimously everywhere. So, the strange and convenient deaths surrounding the Epstein saga. Let's start. I am not here to finger point or cry conspiracy. That's for the comment section. We're just here to lay out the facts and the timelines and the coincidence that scream odd. And if it keeps you up scrolling at night, that's the real magic. So buckle up because we're starting with the guy who literally was Epstein's last cellmate. Meet Efrain Reyes, a 51-year-old out of the Bronx. He was doing time for a drug conspiracy, a crack and heroin rings in the projects, and not exactly in Epstein's social circle, right? But in the hellhole that was the Metropolitan Correction Center, aka the MCC in Lower Manhattan, Stone ended up as Jeffrey's final cellmate. We're talking the summer of 2019, just weeks after Epstein's arrest for federal sex trafficking charges. Epstein's facing life, spilling secrets that could topple titans, and bam, he's bunking with Stone. And why Stone? Well, get this, Epstein had a bum leg from an old injury, and Stone was described as mild-mannered, a perfect match for the fragile billionaire who was already getting roughed up. Sources say inmates were straight up extorting Epstein for cash and pay up or pay the price type vibes, and the guards, they were no saints. Stone told his family he saw Epstein forced to sleep on the floor, treated like crap by the staff that should have been protecting him, and Epstein even hooked Stone up with contraband of meds to fight insomnia. They talk money, they talk life, and Stone once asked Epstein, "What's it like having all that, Epstein?" Stone said he was struggling, a gelled elite adjusting to the concrete jungle. Now, the odd fact, the timing. On August 19, 2019, just one day before Epstein's suicide, Stone gets transferred out, poof, gone to a Queens detention facility for cooperating witnesses. And why the sudden move, there wasn't a clear answer, but it leaves Epstein solo in the cell. And the next morning on August 10th, the guards went and they checked on him, but no, they didn't. They were napping and browsing on the internet, and the cameras were malfunctioning, and Epstein was found hanging by a bedsheet tied to a bunk, ruled a suicide. But Stone, he wasn't buying it. He later would tell his niece those bunks at MCC were too long for you to hang yourself from, like physically impossible without some serious contortion. How did he even do that, Stone wondered. And he asked too many questions because the FBI would swarm and start asking him questions about Epstein's mood and everything they talked about. And the plot twist is that the Attorney General, William Barr, that's right, Barr, personally sits down with Stone for an interview. Barr, the top guy questioning a Bronx drug dealer about a dead billionaire. Stone spills it all, though. The extortions, the guard abuse, his doubts of the hanging, and weeks of these chats pulling Stone in for jail meetings. Fast forward to 2020 during COVID, it's raging, and it's specifically raging through the prisons like wildfire. Stone catches it, though, at the Queens Detention Facility, and he was released in April. But the damage was already done. On November 27, 2020, he's crashing at his mom's house in the Bronx, and just days later, at Thanksgiving, he's found dead in his bed at 51. And the cause? Complications from the virus. Officially straightforward, except for the whispers. Stone's niece says he was paranoid after the FBI sits down, worried his Epstein interview would haunt him. Follow him around, it'll affect me negatively, he'd say. And yeah, in the middle of a pandemic, a guy with the inside knowledge on the biggest jail scandal ever just fades away. Coincidence? Timing again? Stone's the last guy to see Epstein alive. Questions the suicide method. Chats with Barr himself. 15 months later, he's gone. No note, no drama. Just a quiet exit in a city ruling from this psyop of COVID. Look, COVID took a lot of lives, not denying that, but the Epstein saga with the guards, the fake logs, the billionaires, doesn't make sense. A death like Stone's is just weird. Makes you wonder. How many more? Well, this is just number one. So let's go to number two.
Check last Saturday, but found that Hoffenberg no longer lived at that address. It wasn't until Tuesday of this week that they got an updated address, and that's when they found Hoffenberg's body. 77-year-old Stephen Hoffenberg, a convicted Ponzi schemer and mentor to Jeffrey Epstein, found dead in his derby, arrived at his home on Mount Pleasant Street. They found his body, which police say was heavily decomposed. They believed he had been deceased for approximately 7 to 9 days.
Stephen Hoffenberg. He was the kind of Wall Street operator who could sell ice to a penguin in a blizzard. He was brash, connected, and utterly ruthless. In the 1980s, he ran Tower Financial Corporation out of a gleaming Manhattan office, posing as a debt collection powerhouse while pulling off one of the biggest Ponzi schemes the United States had ever seen. We're talking $460 million from investors in fake bonds and bogus healthcare financial deals. And Hoffenberg jetted around in private planes and scooped up Long Island mansions and Florida pads, and even tried to raid Pan Am Airlines for a takeover. And he lived like a king until he was arrested in 1994. That's when Jeffrey Epstein enters the picture, though, not as some wide-eyed newbie, but as Hoffenberg's secret weapon. He was introduced to Hoffenberg from a British arms dealer named Douglas Leese, who was said to call Epstein a genius with no moral compass. Hoffenberg hired him around 1987. Epstein got a $25,000 a month consultant fee, plus a $2 million interest-free loan that Epstein simply never paid back. And Epstein's Rolodex, backed by Bernsteins and contacts and shady elites, helped them lure in suckers into the Ponzi scheme. They schemed together on everything from Pan Am to cooking books, and Hoffenberg later called Epstein his best friend, a guy who was an absolute center of this entire operation. But when the towers came crumbling down, Tower Financial filed bankruptcy in 1993. Epstein ghosted like a pro. Hoffenberg got nailed in 95, 18 years in federal prison, out in 2013 after serving most of it. And Epstein, again, walked free, never charged, straight into his own empire of finance, and, well, you know the rest. Hoffenberg stewed on this for years, blaming Epstein for everything, and in 2016 he sued him. Screaming in court filings, Epstein was the architect of the scam, the brains who designed the fraud while Hoffenberg took the fall. Post-prison, Hoffenberg flipped sides. Started talking to the Epstein victims and offering to testify about dirty money trials and offshore hustles. And in a 2019 NPR interview, right after Epstein's jailhouse suicide, Hoffenberg flat out said, "I'm the first one in line to assist the victims." He claimed Epstein's whole operation, the islands, the girls, the blackmail, was built on a Ponzi playbook they cooked together years ago. But Hoffenberg kept spilling. Podcasts and documentaries like Surviving Jeffrey Epstein, even chats with accusers like Maria Farmer, who saw him as a father figure. He lived a quiet life after prison, holed up in a modest apartment in Derby, Connecticut, a far cry from the yachts and the planes, and he was battling health issues and still grinding about this restitution from the Epstein estate. And in August 2022, Maria Farmer, the artist who claims Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell assaulted her back in the 90s, started calling Hoffenberg daily, and soon those phone calls would stop. It was unusual, and since they talked consistently, she hired a private investigator to go and get the Derby PD to check on Hoffenberg, and the cops roll up to his multifamily home on the 23rd at around 8 p.m., and they find him, 77 years old, dead in his apartment, body so decomposed it was estimated that he had been gone for at least a week. Dental records confirmed it was Hoffenberg, and the autopsy showed no trauma, no obvious foul play. The toxicology was pending for a little while, but whispers pointed at COVID complications. He had been sick recently, frail, and not taking care of himself, as friends like Gary Bass would say. Official story, though, natural causes. That was the cause of death. Alone in a quiet town, in a checkered life. Stephen Hoffenberg, the man that built the original Ponzi empire with Epstein, who took the fall while Epstein walked untouched, who spent years of his life trying to hand prosecutors a financial map to every dirty dollar that later funded islands and private jets. He was unidentified for over a week, locked in an apartment, and 15 months after Epstein supposedly unalived himself. But number 3 is a little bit more connected, because 6 months before Hoffenberg, there was Luc Brunel, and the shadows were getting longer and longer on this Epstein saga.
This man, the head of Karen Models, one of the largest and most prestigious agencies in the country. His name is Luc Brunel. The girls told us Brunel is very careful about the models who are under the protection of Eileen Ford.
Purpose of somebody wanting to take you home to bed. He is acting as a matchmaker. He's got the agency, he's got the girls. His friends say, oh, Jean-Luc, I'd like to meet some girls, or we're having a party tonight. Can you bring some girls?
Convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and a former French modeling agent facing charges of his own. Tonight, Luc Brunel is dead.
Luc Brunel. He wasn't just a modeling agent. He was a guy who could go into a cafe in Paris or in Kiev and spot a 14-year-old girl and hand her a business card, and within weeks she'd be on a private jet to New York. He was a silver-haired, always in a perfect navy blazer, flashing that easy French smile that made mothers trust him in teenage girls' dream. He discovered supermodels, sure, but behind the glamour was Epstein's favorite hunter. Epstein bankrolled him. Multi-million dollars poured into Brunel's MC2 modeling agency, and in return, Brunel kept the pipeline open. Fresh, young, usually foreign girls who didn't speak much English, didn't have money for a lawyer, and believed a man with a private plane could make them the next Naomi Campbell. One of those victims was Virgina Guffre, who said she was forced to sleep with Brunel when she was a minor, and other girls said that he would drug them at parties, take advantage of them in apartments, and pass them straight to Epstein's little St. James Island. And Brunel laughed it off as crazy fantasies, but when Epstein got arrested in July of 2019, Brunel vanished like smoke. One day he was playing tennis, and the next day he was gone. No trace, no phone, nothing. Police hunted for him for a year, and they finally grabbed him in December 2020 in an airport in Senegal. Charged him with raping minors, organized trafficking, and the whole list. And he was locked up in a hard prison in France, and no bail trial coming, and everyone knew that Brunel talked, and a lot of famous people were finished. And then in the middle of the night in February of 2022 at 1 a.m., the guards were making their rounds as usual, and cell 413 was particularly quiet. An hour later, another guard walked past and sees something swinging from the window bars, and that was Brunel, 75 years old, hanged with his own bedsheet, knotted to the exact kind of fixture the prison is supposed to make impossible to use. No suicide note, no cry for help, no final phone call. And the cameras, they once pointed right at his cell door, they were malfunctioning again, just like Epstein cameras in New York. Think about how insane that is. This is the man that could have named the names of names, shown the photos, produced the dates, the hotel receipts. A man who flew on the Rita Express more times than anyone. A man with the French police had been chasing across continents. And suddenly, he's finally in a cage and on trial, and he's getting close. He decides tonight's the night to end it all in a cell that is supposedly suicide-proof. But the cameras that mysteriously don't work, and nobody hears anything. Epstein dies alone in New York. Hoffenberg rots in Connecticut. Brunel hangs in Paris. Same story, different country, same broken cameras, same convenience. The hunter became the hunted, and then, just when the trap was about to shut, he slipped a noose around his neck and took his own life. Either way, another vault of secrets slammed shut forever, and the shadow just keeps getting bigger. So let's go on to number 4.
A world where grown-ups were allowed to do whatever they wanted and I was lost. Money should not be able to buy you the power to get away with hurting people. Everything that happened on the Lolita Express and his other planes was the same thing that happened in his bedrooms and the massage rooms, on the beach, wherever we were. The abuse did not stop because we're in the air. 95% of the time, there was always sex involved. Jeffrey couldn't take a 2-hour flight without having to ejaculate.
16 years old, she took a job at Mar-a-Lago, believing she had secured a dream summer position. But that dream quickly morphed into a nightmare when Ghislaine Maxwell preyed upon her innocence. This isn't just a story of one girl. It's a story about the insidious nature of power and abuse, a dark chapter in our society that must be told.
Virginia Guffre wasn't just born into the shadows of the Epstein world. She was pulled into them kicking and screaming at the age of 16 years old. And I want you to picture this. It's 2000s, West Palm Beach. She's a wide-eyed locker room attendant at Mar-a-Lago Resort, the kind of place where billionaires sip champagne and pretend the world bends to them. And Ghislaine Maxwell spots her all fresh-faced and trusting and drops the famous hook, do you want a massage job? Meet this guy, Jeffrey. He'll change your life, Virginia says, because who wouldn't? Dreams of modeling, travel, escape, and her escaping a rough home life. Instead, it was the start of a nightmare that would chain her for years. And Epstein and Maxwell, they didn't waste any time. They groomed her fast. Fancy dinners, private jets, promises of education and adventure. But the price, her body, loaned out like a party favor to the circle of elites. And Guffre would later write in her memoir, Nobody's Girl, that she feared she would die a sex slave, passed around like a disposable item. And she would mention guys like Prince Andrews and Alan Dershowitz, a high-powered lawyer who she later cleared after review, and Luc Brunel, who we just talked about, a modeling scout who allegedly raped her and fed more girls into the machine. She was like the canary in the coal mine, the first to sing loud while the others didn't. And in 2015, she broke free, not just from the abuse, but from the silence, where she would sue Maxwell for defamation of character after Maxwell went out and called her a liar. And this is where all these files released in 2017, where you get these 150 Epstein connections. And she founded an organization called Victims Refuse Silence, turning her pain into a megaphone for survivors. And she stared down the camera, detailing the trafficking of Prince Andrews and flipping global opinion on him. And in 2021, she sued him and settled in 2022 for an undisclosed amount, plus a donation to her charity. But Andrew wouldn't apologize for even knowing Epstein. And Guffre wouldn't stop there. She pushed for the Epstein files to transparently be released. And as the emails last week were, they redacted her name, but she had nothing. She said that Trump never did anything to her. But like people in this video, they don't make its video. On April 25th, 2025, at 41 years old, she was found from an apparent suicide on her farm in Australia. And there was no leaked note to the press, no dramatic farewell, just an end to a decades-long war. And in October, her book dropped, Raw and Unfiltered, hitting shelves just as the Epstein emails exploded last week. And her friends refer to her as extraordinary, a woman whose courage pushed them to fight harder. But you zoom out, and the oddity is just like the rest of them. This woman knew everything: dates, names, hidden tapes, elites who looked away, the ones who lawsuits topple Prince Andrew's reputation. Convenient, right?